Imagine a world where chaos and order dance in perfect balance, where the most unlikely figures, tricksters, jesters, and shape-shifters hold the keys to profound wisdom. These aren't just characters from ancient stories. They are the original disruptors, the clever rebels who have been whispering essential truths to humanity for thousands of years. Think about that for a moment. Across continents and cultures, from the frozen north to the sun-drenched savannas, people have been telling stories about mischievous figures who break the rules, challenge the gods, and turn the world upside down. And what's truly remarkable is that these tales weren't just for entertainment. They were carefully crafted vessels of wisdom, disguised as simple folklore, designed to teach us about ourselves, our societies, and our place in the universe. When you hear names like Loki, Anansi, or Coyote, you might picture clever pranksters causing trouble for fun. But look closer, and you'll discover something extraordinary. These trickster myths contain layer upon layer of hidden teachings, lessons about adaptability, resilience, creativity, and even justice that remain startlingly relevant today. They teach us how to question authority without losing ourselves, how to laugh in the face of adversity, and how to find creative solutions when all seems lost. These stories have survived centuries because they speak to something fundamental in the human experience: our need to navigate a complex world with both wisdom and wit, to balance order with chaos, and to find meaning in the most unexpected places. In this video, we're going to embark on a fascinating journey through 21 of these disguised teachings from trickster traditions around the globe. We'll explore how the Norse Loki's rebellious nature teaches us about necessary change, how West African Anansi's cleverness demonstrates the power of resourcefulness, and how Native American Coyote's humorous mishaps reveal profound truths about humility and persistence. These aren't just old stories, they're living wisdom that can help us navigate modern challenges, from personal growth to social change. So settle in and open your mind to the possibility that the most profound lessons often come from the most unlikely teachers. By the end of our exploration, you'll never look at these trickster tales the same way again, and you might just discover new ways to apply their ancient wisdom to your own life. What makes these trickster figures so fascinating is that they appear in almost every mythology around the world, acting as universal archetypes that transcend cultural boundaries. They are the ultimate agents of change, the characters who arrive precisely when things have become too rigid, too predictable, or too stagnant. Operating on the fringes of their respective societies, tricksters don't play by the established rules. They bend them, break them, and sometimes rewrite them entirely, using their sharp wits, clever deception, and often uproarious humor to shake things up. Think about the Norse god Loki, whose schemes constantly challenge the order of Asgard, or the West African spider god Anansi, whose clever tricks often reveal deeper truths about human nature. These figures exist in that beautiful, messy space between chaos and order, and through their actions they force everyone, gods and humans alike, to see the world from a new perspective. One of the most compelling aspects of tricksters is their inherent contradiction. They are both creators and destroyers, foolish clowns and profound sages, helpful allies and troublesome pests. The Native American Coyote, for example, might bumble through a story causing hilarious mishaps, only to accidentally bring fire or important knowledge to humanity. The Greek god Hermes begins his mythological journey by stealing Apollo's cattle, a classic trickster move, yet he also becomes the messenger of the gods and a guide for souls. This duality makes them incredibly relatable. They reflect our own complex natures, our capacity for both wisdom and folly, kindness and selfishness. They don't represent idealized perfection. Instead, they mirror the messy, imperfect, and wonderfully complicated reality of being human. By disrupting the status quo, tricksters serve a vital function. They challenge us to question authority and think outside the box. In a world that often demands conformity, the trickster is the embodiment of creative rebellion. They ask, why are things done this way? And who says they can't be done differently? This isn't rebellion for its own sake. It's a purposeful provocation designed to prevent stagnation and encourage growth. When the Polynesian demigod Maui slows the sun, he's not just showing off, he's altering the very fabric of reality to improve life for people. These stories, in their disguised way, teach us that progress often requires a willingness to challenge conventions and imagine new possibilities. Ultimately, tricksters act as mirrors, reflecting our own behaviors, societies, and potential back at us. Their stories are safe spaces to explore the consequences of ambition, deceit, curiosity, and innovation without having to live through the chaos ourselves. They show us the potential pitfalls of arrogance, the rewards of cleverness, and the importance of laughing at ourselves. This foundational role as the chaotic, wise, foolish, transformative heart of so many myths sets the stage for understanding the profound and very specific teachings hidden within their seemingly simple tales. Now let's dive into our first teaching, beginning with a figure who perfectly embodies the spirit of adaptability, Anansi the spider from Akan folklore. Picture a small, seemingly insignificant spider facing challenges that would daunt even the strongest warriors or wisest elders. Anansi never relies on brute force or traditional power. Instead, he uses his quick wit and ingenious mind to navigate impossible situations. In one famous tale, Anansi must capture a hornet's nest, a python, and a leopard to satisfy a sky god's demand, rather than attempting a direct confrontation, which would surely end in disaster. He crafts clever deceptions. He convinces the hornets that rain is coming and they should hide in a calabash, tricks the python into stretching out to be measured against a pole so he can tie him up, and lures the leopard into a pit with the promise of easy food. Each solution is a masterpiece of improvisation, using nothing more than everyday objects and psychological insight. What makes Anansi's stories so powerful is that they teach us adaptability isn't just about being clever, it's about redefining the resources we already have. He shows that limitations, whether they're physical size, lack of strength, or social standing, can become advantages when viewed through a creative lens. This is a crucial lesson for our modern world, where change is constant and the old rules don't always apply. Think about how industries transform overnight with new technologies, or how personal careers require constant learning and pivoting. Anansi's approach encourages us to ask, what can I do with what I have, rather than lamenting what we lack. It's about seeing a network of possibilities where others see dead ends, much like a spider weaving a web from its own substance, turning inner resourcefulness into a tangible structure for survival and success. But Anansi is also a beautifully flawed teacher, and that's where the real wisdom lies. He doesn't always win. Sometimes his cleverness backfires spectacularly. In some stories, his greed or overconfidence leads to him being outwitted himself, trapped in his own schemes. These failures are just as instructive as his successes. They remind us that adaptability must be paired with wisdom and ethical consideration. It's not about manipulation for its own sake, but about navigating complexity with both ingenuity and integrity. This balance is essential. We live in an era that celebrates disruption, but Anansi's tales caution that true adaptability isn't just about breaking things. It's about building new pathways that are sustainable and respectful of the broader community. This theme of resourcefulness echoes far beyond West Africa. Consider the Native American Coyote, who often uses absurdity and surprise to solve problems, or the Polynesian Maui, who invents clever tools to fish up islands or slow the sun. Each of these tricksters demonstrates that the most valuable skill isn't always strength or formal knowledge, but the capacity to think differently and act decisively with whatever is at hand. They teach us that in a world of uncertainty, the adaptable mind is the most powerful tool we possess. This foundational lesson sets the stage for everything that follows, because without the willingness to adapt, we cannot hope to question, to innovate, or to grow. Now, if adaptability is the trickster's tool, then questioning authority is their target. This brings us to our second teaching, embodied perfectly by the Norse god Loki, a figure who thrives on challenging the very foundations of the world he inhabits. Loki doesn't just break rules, he exposes the flaws and hypocrisies within the system itself. His actions, though frequently chaotic and destructive, serve a profound purpose. They prevent the divine order of Asgard from becoming rigid, complacent, and ultimately stagnant. He is the necessary spark of chaos in a universe that might otherwise succumb to its own perfection. Consider the pivotal myth of Baldur's death. Baldur, the most beloved of the gods, is invulnerable to all threats after his mother Frigg secures oaths from every entity in creation, or so she believes. Loki, ever the skeptic, discovers she overlooked the seemingly insignificant mistletoe. He then crafts a dart from it and guides the hand of the blind god Hodder, resulting in Baldur's tragic death. On the surface, this is a tale of malicious treachery, but look deeper, and you see a disguised teaching about the danger of absolute security and unquestioned authority. The gods had created a perfect, untouchable system, but Loki's act of defiance shatters that illusion, forcing them to confront mortality, grief, and the unpredictable nature of existence. This catastrophic event, while devastating, is what ultimately sets the stage for Ragnarok, the great destruction and rebirth of the world. Without Loki's disruptive action, there could be no renewal. This narrative powerfully illustrates that progress is rarely born from comfortable compliance. It emerges from the courage to ask, why is it this way? And to challenge the answer, because it has always been so. Tricksters like Loki are the mythic embodiment of this critical thinking. They remind us that structures of power, whether divine kings or societal conventions, can become calcified over time, resistant to the very change needed for survival and growth. The trickster's role is to be the agent of that necessary chaos, to poke holes in unquestioned traditions and force a re-evaluation of the status quo. This teaching resonates far beyond the Norse realms. In West African stories, the trickster spider Anansi often outwits larger, more powerful animals, symbolically challenging the established hierarchy. The Native American coyote frequently tricks arrogant chiefs or powerful spirits, redistributing power or knowledge to the people. These stories weren't just told for amusement around a fire. They were safe, cultural containers for exploring themes of resistance and questioning authority without direct, dangerous confrontation. They gave people a framework to understand that it is not only acceptable, but sometimes essential to challenge those in power when their rules become unjust or oppressive. In our modern context, this trickster teaching is incredibly relevant. Every significant social movement, from civil rights to environmental activism, begins with individuals and groups questioning entrenched conventions and authority figures. Scientific breakthroughs often happen when someone dares to challenge a long-held theory. Technological innovation disrupts entire industries built on old models. The trickster spirit encourages a healthy, constructive skepticism, not a cynical rejection of all order, but a willingness to interrogate the foundations of that order to see if they are still sound. It's about understanding that sometimes, to build something new and better, you must first be willing to creatively disrupt what already exists. Now, let's turn to a teaching that might seem counterintuitive at first, but is perhaps one of the most vital tools in the trickster's kit: the transformative power of humor and levity. While figures like Loki or Anansi challenge authority with cunning, other tricksters, such as the Native American Coyote or the European jester Till Eulenspiegel, wield laughter as their primary weapon. Their stories are filled with outrageous pranks, absurd situations, and comedic failures that, on the surface, appear to be simple entertainment. But beneath the laughter lies a profound and sophisticated form of social commentary. These characters use humor as a strategic tool to broach uncomfortable subjects, critique powerful figures, and expose societal hypocrisies in a way that is disarming and therefore far more effective than direct accusation. Consider the tales of Till Eulenspiegel, a legendary jester from German folklore. In one story, he is hired by a wealthy but notoriously miserly baker. Told to watch the baked goods while the baker is away, Till obediently follows his instructions to the letter. When flies land on the pastries, he diligently watches them but does nothing to shoo them away, allowing the treats to be ruined. The baker returns, furious, but Till's literal interpretation of the command highlights the absurdity of the baker's own stinginess and poor communication. The story gets a laugh, but it also delivers a sharp critique of greed and the foolishness of valuing pedantic instruction over common sense. The humor creates a safe space for the audience to recognize these flaws in themselves and others without feeling personally attacked, allowing the lesson to sink in through amusement rather than argument. This approach is a masterclass in navigating delicate social dynamics. Humor allows the trickster to say the unsayable. It acts as a pressure valve, releasing social tensions that might otherwise build to a breaking point. In cultures with strict hierarchies or repressive social structures, the trickster's antics provide a sanctioned outlet for criticism. The court jester was often the only person who could mock the king without losing their head precisely because the critique was packaged as a joke. The Native American Coyote stories operate on a similar principle. Coyote's endless attempts to cheat, steal, or show off almost always end in hilarious failure. He might try to fly like a bird only to crash into a canyon, or attempt to host a grand feast and accidentally burn all the food. We laugh at his vanity and foolishness, but in doing so, we are also laughing at our own. These stories hold up a mirror to human nature, reflecting our greed, pride, and short-sightedness back at us in a form so ridiculous that we can accept the critique without becoming defensive. Beyond social critique, this teaching underscores humor's incredible power as a tool for resilience and community building. In the face of adversity, tragedy, or overwhelming seriousness, laughter can be an act of defiance and survival. Trickster myths often emerge from communities dealing with hardship, colonial oppression, harsh environments, social inequality. The ability to laugh, even at the darkest moments, is a testament to the human spirit's endurance. Sharing a story about Coyote's disastrous fishing trip or Anansi getting stuck in his own web fosters a sense of shared experience and collective identity. It reminds everyone that they are not alone in their struggles and that there is joy and connection to be found even in the midst of difficulty. The laughter inspired by the trickster doesn't diminish the seriousness of life's challenges. Instead, it provides the emotional and psychological strength needed to face them. In our modern world, which can often feel overwhelmingly grave, this trickster teaching is a crucial reminder not to underestimate the power of a well-timed joke or a lighthearted perspective. Satire in media, political cartoons, and even memes are the descendants of the trickster's tradition, using humor to critique power and make complex issues more accessible and engaging. On a personal level, embracing levity helps us cope with stress, maintain mental well-being, and build stronger, more empathetic connections with others. The trickster shows us that wisdom doesn't always have to be solemn. Sometimes the deepest truths are delivered with a wink and a smile, making them all the more memorable and enduring. This ability to laugh, especially at ourselves, is not a sign of frivolity, but a mark of profound strength and intelligence. This brings us to a crucial and often sobering lesson embedded within these seemingly light-hearted tales: the profound consequences of deception. While tricksters are celebrated for their cunning, their stories rarely let them off the hook for the chaos they sow. The cleverest trick can be a trap for the trickster themselves, teaching that every action, especially those rooted in deceit, carries a ripple effect of outcomes. This is not about condemning cleverness, but about understanding its weight and the ethical responsibility that comes with it. The tales serve as intricate moral laboratories, allowing us to safely experiment with the outcomes of dishonesty and observe its true cost. Nowhere is this double-edged sword more elegantly portrayed than in the stories of the Japanese kitsune, the fox spirit. A kitsune might use its magical abilities to shape-shift into a beautiful woman, weaving an illusion to marry a wealthy human or to play an elaborate prank. In the short term, the deception works flawlessly. The kitsune gains comfort, amusement, or a temporary advantage. But these stories almost always unfold toward a moment of revelation, a dropped tail, a reflection in water, or the scent of fox that betrays the illusion. The consequence is rarely violent punishment. Instead, it is often a deep, poignant loneliness. The trust is shattered, the relationship is irrevocably broken, and the kitsune is left isolated, forced to return to the wilds alone, wiser but also sorrowful for the connection it has lost through its own deceit. This teaches that the true cost of deception isn't always getting caught. It's the erosion of the genuine bonds that make life meaningful. This pattern repeats across global traditions, reinforcing the lesson that cleverness without conscience is a hollow victory. Consider the Norse Loki once more. His web of lies and schemes grows so complex and intertwined that he eventually becomes entangled within it. The very deceit he used to control others ultimately leads to his own brutal binding and torment, a direct result of the trust he systematically destroyed among the gods. Even Anansi the spider, in some tales, finds that his clever plan to hoard all the world's wisdom in a pot backfires spectacularly. He struggles to climb a tree with the pot strapped to his belly, and his son's simple, honest observation about a better way to carry it proves that wisdom cannot be possessed through trickery alone. It must be shared and tempered with humility. The pot slips, shatters, and the wisdom scatters to the winds, available to everyone. His attempt to deceive for personal gain inadvertently leads to a greater good, but only through his own failure and embarrassment. These narratives move beyond a simple, cheaters never prosper morality. They present a far more nuanced exploration of intent and outcome. The teaching isn't that deception is always evil, but that it is a dangerous tool. The kitsune might play a trick to teach an arrogant samurai a lesson in humility, a positive outcome born from a deceptive act. The key distinction lies in the trickster's intent and the long-term consequences. Is the deception for pure selfish gain, or does it serve a larger purpose of justice, balance, or education? Even when the intent is good, the stories show that the deceiver must still be prepared to face the fallout, to manage the chaos they have unleashed, and to bear the personal cost of operating outside the bounds of trust. This ancient wisdom is incredibly relevant in our modern world, a landscape often shaped by spin, misinformation, and the allure of the shortcut. We see the consequences play out in the collapse of a reputation built on lies, the breakdown of a relationship fractured by betrayal, or the societal distrust sown by rampant disinformation. The trickster myths teach us to be shrewd and resourceful, but they also warn us that a life built on deception is a fragile one. True, lasting success requires a foundation of integrity. Cunning must be partnered with character, and cleverness must be guided by a moral compass. It's about understanding that our words and actions are interconnected, that every choice we make weaves a thread in the larger web of our lives, and that repairing a broken thread of trust is far more difficult than simply being honest from the start. If the trickster's use of deception teaches us about ethical boundaries, their spectacular and repeated failures offer a masterclass in resilience. This is where these chaotic figures reveal their most human and perhaps most inspiring quality: the sheer, dogged determination to try again. Far from being infallible heroes, tricksters are mythology's greatest failures. They stumble, they miscalculate, they get caught, and they often face humiliating consequences. Yet they never seem to let defeat have the final word. Their stories reframe failure not as a mark of shame, but as an essential, gritty, and transformative part of the journey toward any meaningful goal. Consider the Polynesian demigod Maui, a figure of immense power and ambition. His legends are a catalogue of breathtaking attempts that fall just short of total success. In his most famous quest, Maui seeks to win immortality for all of humanity. He believes the secret lies in confronting the great goddess of death, Hain Nui Te Po. The plan is audacious. He must crawl into her body while she sleeps and emerge from her mouth, thus conquering death itself. It's a mission born of profound courage and love for humankind. But as he begins his journey, one of his accompanying birds, unable to contain its amusement at the bizarre sight, laughs aloud. The goddess awakens, and Maui is crushed between her thighs. His bold endeavor ends in tragic, sudden failure. He dies, and mortality remains the enduring condition for humanity. On the surface, this is a story of definitive defeat. But the power of the myth lies in its refusal to let that failure define Maui's legacy. The story is not told to warn against ambition, it is told to celebrate it. Maui's attempt, though unsuccessful, is remembered as one of the most heroic and compassionate acts in Polynesian mythology. It teaches that the value of an effort is not solely in its outcome, but in the courage required to make it. Maui's failure becomes a lesson in accepting human limitations while still striving for the extraordinary. His resilience is remembered not because he succeeded, but because he dared so greatly for the benefit of others. This theme of productive failure echoes strongly in the tales of the African hare, another classic trickster known in various traditions. Unlike the divine Maui, the hare is often small and vulnerable, relying on wit rather than strength. And his plans backfire constantly. He might try to steal from a garden only to be chased away by bees, or attempt to trick a larger animal into doing his work and end up doing twice as much himself. Each story is a small, comedic drama of trial and error. The hare's resilience isn't portrayed as a stoic, grim determination. It's a playful, almost instinctual bounce-back ability. He dusts himself off, learns what he can from the mishap, and scurries off to try a new approach tomorrow. His failures are not catastrophes. They are data points in an ongoing experiment of living by his wits. This narrative approach is a radical departure from the classic hero's journey, where the protagonist often achieves a clear and decisive victory. The trickster's journey is messier, more iterative, and far more relatable. How many of us have ever achieved a goal on the first try? Their stories validate the experience of trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. They normalize the iterative process that underpins everything from learning a new skill to building a relationship to innovating in science and art. In a modern culture that often worships overnight success and hides the messy process behind it, the trickster stands as a timeless testament to the truth that mastery is born from 1,000 small, unseen failures. The resilience modeled by these figures is not a passive endurance but an active engagement with the world. It's a creativity applied to the problem of persistence itself. When one path is blocked, the trickster finds another. When a plan explodes in their face, they examine the pieces to see what might be useful next time. This reframes resilience not as simply toughing it out, but as a dynamic, learning-focused adaptability in the face of setbacks. It's the understanding that every mistake carries embedded information on how to do better next time, making each failure a stepping stone rather than a tombstone. This profound teaching encourages us to shed our fear of imperfection and to engage with our own ambitions and dreams, not with a guarantee of success, but with the trickster's playful and persistent spirit of experimentation. If the resilience of tricksters like Maui and the hare teaches us to persist through failure, their most dazzling quality is how they actually achieve their goals through breathtaking creativity and radical innovation. This isn't just about thinking differently, it's about reimagining the very fabric of reality to solve problems that seem utterly insurmountable. Tricksters are the ultimate innovators because they are not bound by the rules of the physical world or the conventions of society. They operate in a space of pure potential, where the only limit is the scope of their own imagination, and their stories are masterclasses in how to shatter the status quo to make way for something entirely new. A perfect embodiment of this is the Native American raven, a figure central to the myths of many Pacific Northwest cultures. The world, in the beginning of these stories, is often depicted as a dim, gray, shadowy place, shrouded in mist and blanketed in a perpetual twilight. The people live in a state of quiet struggle, unable to see clearly, to hunt effectively, or to feel the warmth of the sun. The solution to this problem isn't something that can be found through hard work or gradual improvement. It requires a paradigm shift. The raven sees this. He doesn't petition the being who owns the light or try to negotiate for a share of it. He understands that the existing system is closed and guarded. So he conceives a plan of such audacious creativity that it defies all conventional logic. He transforms himself, shape-shifting into a mere speck, a pine needle, and allows himself to be swallowed by the daughter of the powerful being who hoards the light. He is reborn inside the house as a crying child, and through this incredible deception, he gains access to the very heart of the treasure. His innovation isn't a tool or a technology. It's the entire narrative of his plan, a story he writes himself into, using his own body and identity as the primary instruments of change. When the moment is right, he reverts to his true form, seizes the sun in his beak, and bursts through the smoke hole, scattering light across the entire world, and forever altering the condition of existence for everyone. This myth is a powerful allegory for the nature of true innovation. The raven doesn't accept the world as it is given. He identifies a fundamental human need and then engineers a solution that is as beautiful as it is effective. His method is not linear, it is cyclical, transformative, and deeply symbolic. He becomes the problem to become the solution. This is the essence of the trickster's creative genius, the ability to see connections where others see only barriers, to use narrative and metamorphosis as tools, and to understand that the most direct path to a goal is rarely a straight line. The raven's creativity is not just for personal gain. It is a profoundly generative act that benefits all of humanity. He steals not to possess, but to give. This spirit of unconventional problem-solving is the lifeblood of progress in our own world. Every great leap forward in human history, from the invention of the wheel to the discovery of penicillin to the creation of the internet, came from someone who, like the raven, looked at an entrenched problem and dared to imagine a solution that everyone else thought was impossible or even absurd. The trickster myth validates the innovator's path, which is often lonely and fraught with ridicule. It reminds us that the initial reaction to a radical new idea is rarely applause. It is more often confusion, resistance, or outright hostility. The raven was, from the perspective of the light's keeper, a thief and a trespasser, but from the perspective of the people, he was a liberator and a hero. This duality is crucial to understanding innovation. It always disrupts the existing order, and whether that disruption is seen as destructive or constructive depends entirely on your point of view. The teaching here is to cultivate what we might call trickster thinking. This means giving ourselves permission to play with ideas, to experiment with wild combinations, and to embrace approaches that might seem silly or unorthodox at first glance. It's about asking, what if, instead of that's impossible? The raven didn't ask for permission to change the world. He simply went out and changed it through the sheer force of his creative will. In our own lives, whether we're trying to solve a complex problem at work, navigate a personal challenge, or contribute to our community, this trickster energy encourages us to break free from the conventional patterns that limit our thinking. It urges us to be the raven in our own gray worlds, to find the hidden pine needle, to transform ourselves, and to bring back the light. This embrace of contradiction leads us directly into one of the most profound and sophisticated teachings embedded in these myths: the necessity of embracing duality and complexity. If the trickster's creativity shows us how to reshape the world, their very nature reveals a deeper truth about the world's fundamental fabric. Tricksters are walking, talking paradoxes. They refuse to be pinned down to a single role or a simple moral category. In the very same story, a trickster can be both the cause of a problem and the source of its solution, the fool and the sage, the benevolent guide and the selfish prankster. They are not just complex characters, they are living embodiments of the idea that life itself is not a series of simple binaries but a rich, often messy, tapestry of coexisting opposites. Consider the Hindu god Krishna, a figure who beautifully exemplifies this teaching. In the grand theological framework, Krishna is the eighth avatar of the supreme god Vishnu, the divine protector of the universe. He is the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, imparting the highest spiritual wisdom on duty, righteousness, and the path to enlightenment. Yet his childhood and youth are filled with delightful, cunning trickster tales. He is the butter thief, the charming cowherd who playfully steals the hearts of the gopis' milkmaids and the butter from their kitchens. He uses clever illusions and deceptions to protect his community from demons and tyrannical kings. Here is a character who is simultaneously the ultimate cosmic authority and a mischievous, almost impish child. This isn't a contradiction that needs to be resolved. It is a duality to be accepted and celebrated. The teaching is that the divine is not distant and severe but can be intimate, playful, and surprising. Wisdom does not always wear a solemn face. It can arrive with a mischievous smile and a stolen treat, reminding us that joy and profundity are not opposites but partners. This refusal of simple labels is a radical act. In a world that constantly pressures us to choose sides, to identify as one thing or another, good or bad, smart or foolish, serious or fun, the trickster stands as a mythic protest against this oversimplification. The Native American coyote can be a culture hero who brings fire or important knowledge to the people in one story, and in the very next, he can be a gluttonous, arrogant buffoon whose schemes blow up in his face, often literally. The Norse Loki is a crucial ally to the gods, helping them out of binds with his clever plans, and he is also the architect of their greatest tragedy, the death of Baldur. These narratives force the audience to hold two conflicting ideas in their minds at once. We are not allowed to simply love or hate these figures. We are compelled to engage with them in their full, frustrating, fascinating complexity. This has a powerful mirroring effect on our own self-perception. The trickster reflects back to us the truth that we, too, are not simple, consistent beings. We contain multitudes. We can be both generous and selfish, courageous and afraid, wise and foolish, often within the same hour. The trickster myth gives us permission to accept these contradictions within ourselves without judgment. It normalizes the internal conflict that is part of the human condition. The teaching isn't that we should aspire to be chaotic like the trickster, but that we should strive for self-awareness. By acknowledging our own dualities, our capacity for both kindness and pettiness, for creation and destruction, we achieve a more integrated and honest sense of self. We stop trying to force ourselves into a box labeled good person and instead embrace the ongoing, dynamic process of becoming. Furthermore, this acceptance of complexity is the very foundation of empathy and nuanced thinking. When we internalize the trickster's lesson that nothing is purely one thing, we become less likely to judge others harshly or reduce them to a single label based on a mistake or a single action. We start to see the world in shades of gray, which is not a sign of moral weakness but of perceptual maturity. We understand that a person can be flawed and still be worthy of respect, that a situation can have no perfect solution and still require a decision, that two opposing viewpoints can each contain a fragment of the truth. This ability to sit with ambiguity, to resist the urge for premature closure or simplistic answers, is perhaps one of the most valuable skills we can cultivate in an increasingly polarized world. The trickster, in all its chaotic glory, is an unlikely but masterful guide into this essential way of being. Even as they dance on the fringes, celebrated for their cunning and self-reliant antics, tricksters are never truly isolated. Their most powerful lessons unfold within the intricate web of community, revealing a profound truth. Our actions, no matter how personal or seemingly insignificant, send ripples through the entire social pond. This is the eighth teaching, a masterclass in interdependence hidden within the chaotic adventures of figures like Anansi and the Celtic Puck. They show us that individuality and community are not opposing forces but partners in a delicate dance, and that understanding this connection is the bedrock of a healthy society. Take Anansi the spider, a character whose schemes are often driven by pure self-interest, a craving for a bigger share of food, a desire to avoid hard work or simple greed. In one classic tale, Anansi decides he's tired of working for his meals and hatches a plan to hoard all the world's wisdom in a pot for himself. He succeeds in collecting it, but his attempt to hide the pot at the top of a tall tree while clutching it to his chest is a comical disaster. He can't climb. His young son, watching from below, simply suggests, "Father, why not tie the pot to your back?" In that moment, Anansi's solitary quest for exclusive possession is hilariously undone by a simple, cooperative suggestion. The pot tumbles, shatters, and the wisdom scatters to the winds, becoming available to everyone. Anansi's selfish act, intended to elevate him above the community, ironically results in the greatest communal benefit of all: shared knowledge. The story isn't just about a trickster's failure. It's a brilliant allegory for how individualistic hoarding ultimately fails, while sharing and collective access create a stronger, wiser society for all. This theme of interconnected consequences is equally vivid in the lore of Puck, also known as Robin Goodfellow from English and Celtic traditions. Puck is a solitary fairy, a wanderer who loves to play pranks on solitary travelers or meddle in the affairs of mortals for his own amusement. In Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, his individual actions squeezing love potion on the wrong eyelids create a chaotic domino effect that unravels multiple relationships and threatens the social order of the entire group of lovers. The chaos is hilarious, but the underlying message is serious. One person's mischief, even if not ill-intentioned, can disrupt the delicate harmony of an entire community. The resolution only comes when Puck is compelled to use his magic not for personal fun, but to repair the damage and restore balance, actively working to mend the social fabric he tore. His journey from a solitary prankster to an agent of communal restoration perfectly illustrates the trickster's lesson that with great power, even the power of mischief, comes the responsibility to consider the wider impact of our actions. These narratives move beyond simple morality tales about being nice. They offer a sophisticated understanding of social ecosystems. The Trickster, by operating on the edge of the rules, acts as a stress test for the community. His disruptions reveal the hidden connections, the unspoken dependencies, and the fragile agreements that hold the group together. When Coyote tricks an arrogant chief into giving away his hoarded food, he's not just scoring a meal, he's exposing the injustice of hoarding and forcing a redistribution that strengthens the community's resilience. The initial chaos caused by the Trickster often serves to correct a larger imbalance, teaching that a community's health isn't measured by its peace and quiet, but by its ability to adapt, correct injustices, and integrate the lessons learned from disruption. This ancient teaching resonates with stunning clarity in our modern, hyper-connected world. We live in an era that often celebrates radical individualism, yet we are more socially and economically interdependent than ever before. A decision made in a corporate boardroom on the other side of the globe can impact the ecosystem of an entire region. A piece of misinformation shared by one person on social media can ripple out and influence a national conversation. The Trickster myths remind us that the myth of the completely self-made individual is just that, a myth. Our successes are built on a foundation laid by others, and our failures often have collateral damage. The teaching is to embrace a mindful individualism, one that celebrates our unique talents and initiatives, but always with an awareness of our place within the larger human network. It's about understanding that our freedom to act extends only to the point where it begins to harm the collective well-being, and that true prosperity isn't about climbing the tree alone with the pot clutched to our chest, but about ensuring everyone has the wisdom to climb together. If the Trickster's role in community teaches us about our social fabric, their most intimate lesson is perhaps the one they learn themselves: the inevitability and necessity of transformation. This isn't the kind of change that happens gently or easily. It's the kind forged in the fires of chaos, failure, and outright disaster. Trickster myths are, at their heart, stories about becoming. They chronicle a journey from one state of being to another, often through a process that is messy, painful, and profoundly enlightening. The Trickster doesn't just cause change in the world around them. They are themselves the primary subject of change, and in their metamorphosis, they offer us a powerful map for our own personal growth. Consider the endless cycle of Coyote's adventures in Native American traditions. Coyote is a constant work in progress, a character who is rarely the same at the end of a story as he was at the beginning. He might set out on a journey boasting of his own cleverness, only to be humbled by his own greed or short-sightedness. In one tale, he attempts to steal a pair of magical eyes, believing they will grant him greater power and perception. He succeeds in the theft, but the new eyes show him terrifying visions of the future and the hidden dangers of the world realities he was blissfully ignorant of before. Overwhelmed and afraid, he is forced to return them, but he can never quite go back to seeing the world as he once did. The experience, though traumatic, has transformed him. He has been expanded by a difficult truth, and while he might still play the fool tomorrow, a new layer of understanding, however faint, now resides within him. His literal change of eyes becomes a powerful metaphor for the psychological and spiritual shifts we undergo when life forces us to confront uncomfortable realities. This theme of transformative ordeal is echoed magnificently in the Greek myth of Prometheus, a trickster figure of a different, more tragic stripe. Prometheus's great act of rebellion, stealing fire from the gods to give to humanity, is the ultimate trickster move, a deliberate deception of a powerful authority for a purpose that disrupts the cosmic order. His transformation is not one of foolishness to wisdom, but of freedom to agonizing sacrifice. For his crime, Zeus chains him to a rock where an eagle eternally devours his liver. This is a story about the brutal cost of advancement and growth. Prometheus is transformed from a vibrant titan into a symbol of perpetual suffering, but also into an enduring icon of selfless progress. His personal torment is the direct price paid for the transformation of all humankind, which was lifted from darkness into the light of civilization, knowledge, and technology. His story teaches that profound growth, whether personal or collective, often demands an equally profound sacrifice. We are shaped not only by our joys but by our sufferings, and the marks of that shaping are what give us our depth and our strength. What makes these transformation narratives so compelling is that they are never clean or linear. Coyote doesn't have a single epiphany and become a wise, respected leader. He stumbles, forgets his lessons, and makes the same mistakes in new ways. Prometheus's punishment is cyclical and unending. This refusal to offer a simple, happily ever after is where the real wisdom lies. It mirrors our own lived experience of personal growth. We don't wake up one day permanently transformed into a perfect, finished version of ourselves. Growth is a spiral. We learn a lesson, we backslide, we relearn it at a deeper level, we face a new challenge that tests our understanding, and we continue evolving. The Trickster's journey validates this non-linear process. It tells us that the point isn't to arrive at a state of perfection, but to remain open to the process itself, to allow our experiences, especially our failures and hardships, to continually reshape us. This teaching is an urgent antidote to the modern desire for comfort and consistency. We often seek to build safe, predictable lives, insulating ourselves from disruption. But the Trickster reminds us that insulation can easily become stagnation. The very challenges we avoid, the failed project, the ended relationship, the personal crisis, are the very crucibles in which our character is tempered and reforged. Coyote's disastrous fishing trip isn't just a comedy. It's a reminder that we learn more from a spectacular failure than from an easy success. By embracing the Trickster's spirit of chaotic evolution, we can learn to meet life's inevitable upheavals not with fear and resistance, but with courage and a curious mind, asking not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is this experience transforming me into?" After celebrating the transformative power of failure and chaos, we arrive at perhaps the most grounding of all the Trickster's lessons, the vital necessity of humility and self-awareness. For all their dazzling cleverness and world-altering ambition, Tricksters are ultimately brought low not by a more powerful enemy, but by the one flaw they can never quite outrun, their own towering ego. This is the great leveler in their stories, the moment where the master of deception falls for the oldest trick in the book, self-deception. Their tales serve as brilliant, often hilarious, cautionary narratives about the perils of hubris, reminding us that true wisdom isn't just about knowing how to win, but about knowing your own limits. We see this play out with devastating finality in the Norse myths with Loki. His intellect is arguably superior to that of any other god in Asgard. He can talk his way out of almost any situation and devise plans so complex they bend reality itself. But this very brilliance becomes his undoing. His arrogance grows with each successful scheme until he believes himself truly untouchable. This overconfidence culminates in the cruel and unnecessary trick that leads to the death of the beloved god Baldur. For this transgression, the god's patience finally snaps. They don't engage him in a battle of wits, they simply overpower him, binding him in a cave with the entrails of his own son, with a serpent dripping venom onto his face for all eternity. Loki's punishment is so horrifying precisely because it is so physical and inescapable. All his clever words are useless, his silver tongue cannot talk him out of these chains. His story is a stark warning that intelligence without humility and cunning without conscience is a path that leads to a profound and lonely ruin. This theme of the arrogant trickster meeting his match is wonderfully universal. Travel to West Africa and you'll find similar tales featuring the tortoise. In many stories, the tortoise is a smaller, slower counterpart to the more famous Anansi, but he is just as clever and often far more boastful. A classic tale tells of the tortoise who, after hearing the birds talk of a great feast in the sky, convinces them to each give him a feather so he can glue them to his shell and fly up with them. His ruse works and he arrives at the feast, but once there, his greed and arrogance take over. He not only eats the best food but insults the hosts and claims the feast was all in his own honor. Enraged, the birds take back their feathers before flying home, leaving the stranded tortoise to smash his shell on the hard ground below. His survival comes at a cost. His shell is shattered and must be painstakingly pieced back together by his family, leaving him with the cracked patchwork shell he has to this day. His physical form becomes a permanent, visible record of his folly, a constant, humbling reminder of the consequences of vanity and overreach. What makes these stories so effective is that they aren't about punishing intelligence or ambition. They are about punishing the lack of self-awareness that so often accompanies them. The tortoise wasn't wrong for wanting to attend the feast. His error was in forgetting that he was there only through the generosity of others, and then acting as if he were the sole architect of his success. Loki's fatal mistake wasn't his cunning, but his belief that his cunning placed him above the fundamental bonds of kinship and respect that held his world together. Their downfalls are not caused by a more clever adversary, but by their own blind spots. They are outwitted by their own reflection, by their inability to see themselves clearly. This is the profound, disguised teaching nestled within these cautionary conclusions. The trickster's journey, for all its external chaos, is also an internal one. The ultimate challenge isn't to defeat a monster or outsmart a god. It is to conquer one's own ego. The lesson is that confidence is a powerful tool, but it must be tempered with a grounded understanding of our own limitations and a genuine appreciation for the contributions of others. It's the wisdom to know that no one, no matter how brilliant, is an island. We all rely on the feathers offered by our community, our colleagues, and our predecessors. Forgetting that, as the tortoise and Loki learned, has a way of bringing us back to earth with a very hard and painful thud. This cultivation of humility is what prevents our strengths from becoming our greatest weaknesses, allowing us to wield our talents with grace, effectiveness, and respect. Now, if adaptability is the trickster's tool and questioning authority is their target, then persuasion is their chosen weapon, a subtle, sophisticated art they wield with the precision of a master craftsman. This 11th teaching pulls back the curtain on the immense power of language itself, revealing how tricksters like the West African Anansi and the European Reynard the fox don't just rely on clever tricks. They use words as their primary instrument to shape reality, bend wills, and orchestrate outcomes that seem to defy all logic. Their stories are ancient textbooks on the psychology of influence, demonstrating that the most potent force in any world, mythical or real, isn't brute strength or magical power, but a well-chosen argument delivered at precisely the right moment. Consider the legendary Reynard the Fox, a central figure in medieval European folklore. Reynard is perpetually in trouble with the royal court of animals, facing accusations of theft, fraud, and even murder. His survival never depends on winning a fight. It hinges entirely on his silver tongue. In one famous cycle, Reynard stands condemned before King Lion, with all the animal barons baying for his execution. A weaker creature would crumble, but Reynard doesn't even attempt to deny the charges outright. Instead, he masterfully redirects the conversation. He weaves an elaborate, emotionally charged story, painting himself as a misunderstood patriot who only ever acted for the good of the crown. He skillfully flatters the king, casts suspicion on his accusers by hinting at a vast conspiracy against the throne, and presents a fictional treasure, a hoard of priceless jewels, that he claims only he can locate for the monarch. Through this dazzling performance of rhetoric, he doesn't just secure a pardon, he turns the tables completely, leaving the court questioning his enemies and viewing him as an indispensable ally. He understands that controlling the narrative is infinitely more powerful than contesting the facts. This masterclass in rhetorical manipulation finds a brilliant parallel in the tales of Anansi the spider. Anansi's greatest heists are almost always verbal. He doesn't break into a guarded compound, he talks his way in. In one story, he aims to win a contest to own all the stories in the world. The challenge is to capture several dangerous creatures: Arcibo the leopard, Mmoboro the hornet, and Mmosha the fairy. Anansi doesn't set a single trap or throw a single punch. He engages each one in a conversation designed to exploit their specific psychology. He appeals to the leopard's curiosity, to the hornet's pride, and to the fairy's competitive spirit. With each carefully crafted sentence, he gently guides them into voluntarily placing themselves into the very captivity he has prepared. His success is a testament to the power of strategic communication, the ability to listen, identify a target's deepest desires or insecurities, and then frame a proposition that makes your goals seem like their idea. He doesn't conquer, he convinces. Yet, woven through these entertaining tales of verbal victory is a crucial ethical thread, a disguised warning about the double-edged nature of this skill. The stories never let us forget that persuasion, in the wrong hands or with the wrong intent, is simply manipulation in a more polished form. Reynard's brilliant speech saves his skin, but it's built on a foundation of lies and flattery that ultimately corrupts the court's justice. Anansi's clever words secure the stories, but they also involve a fundamental deception. The teaching here is not to become a flawless liar, but to understand the immense responsibility that comes with the power of language. It encourages us to develop our own rhetorical skills, to learn how to articulate our ideas clearly, to frame our arguments persuasively, and to listen actively to others, but to do so with a moral compass firmly in hand. The goal isn't to win at any cost, but to communicate in a way that builds understanding, fosters genuine connection, and when necessary, enlightens rather than deceives. This nuanced lesson is perhaps more critical today than ever before. We live in an age saturated with language, from advertising copy and political speeches to social media debates and corporate presentations. We are constantly being persuaded, and we are constantly attempting to persuade others. The trickster myths give us the tools to be more critical consumers of language, to listen for the flattery and fear-mongering hidden in a sales pitch, and to recognize when a narrative is being constructed to serve a hidden agenda. Simultaneously, they empower us to become more effective and ethical communicators ourselves, to use our words not to manipulate, but to inspire, to collaborate, to teach, and to build a shared reality based on trust and mutual respect, rather than on clever deception. Yet for all their self-serving mischief, tricksters also embody a powerful and unexpected moral force, emerging in countless traditions as unlikely champions for justice and fierce opponents of tyranny. This 12th teaching reveals a fascinating duality. These chaotic figures, so often out for themselves, can become brilliant instruments of social balance, using their cunning not for personal gain but to challenge oppression and give voice to the voiceless. They operate where direct confrontation would be suicide, leveraging their wit as the ultimate equalizer against brute strength and entrenched power. In a world where the scales are often rigged, the trickster doesn't try to overpower the strong. They simply find a way to tilt the entire table. We see this role of the righteous provocateur played masterfully by the Native American Coyote. In numerous stories from various tribes, Coyote turns his talent for deception towards correcting imbalances of power. He might encounter a powerful spirit or a greedy chief who is hoarding all the game, leaving the people hungry. Coyote doesn't rally an army, he devises a clever ruse, perhaps he feigns ignorance, luring the arrogant figure into a boastful explanation of his own magical abilities, only to subtly turn that power against him. Or he might stage an elaborate performance, convincing the hoarder that a greater threat is coming, forcing them to release the resources they once guarded so jealously. The outcome is always the same. The food, water, or knowledge is liberated and redistributed to the community. Coyote's actions are a form of mythical civil disobedience, demonstrating that unfair systems can be dismantled not through overwhelming force, but through intelligent, strategic non-compliance that exposes the absurdity of the oppression itself. This archetype of the trickster as a balancing force is a global phenomenon. In the folklore of enslaved Africans in the Americas, characters like Biara Rabbit inherited the mantle of Anansi. Facing the unimaginable brutality and absolute power imbalance of the plantation system, direct rebellion was often impossible. So the stories gave us Biara Rabbit, a small, vulnerable creature who constantly outwits the far larger and stronger Biara Fox and Biara Bear. His victories are not just for his own belly, they are symbolic wins for every oppressed person listening. Each time he uses his wits to escape a trap or turn his opponent's strength into a weakness, the story reaffirms that the human spirit cannot be enslaved, that intelligence and creativity are weapons the powerful cannot easily control. These narratives were vital survival tools, teaching resilience, subversion, and the quiet, persistent pursuit of dignity under unimaginable hardship. The profound teaching here is that the pursuit of justice is not a passive wish. It is an active, creative process. The trickster myth redefines heroism away from the classic warrior who wins through physical might and toward the clever individual who wins through psychological acuity and moral ingenuity. It tells us that we don't need permission to challenge what is wrong, and we don't need to wait for a leader to emerge. We can start where we are with what we have. The trickster's toolbox is available to everyone: satire to ridicule corrupt logic, cleverness to bypass bureaucratic barriers, and narrative to reshape public understanding. Every act of speaking truth to power, every creative protest, every exposure of hypocrisy is an application of this ancient trickster spirit. It's the understanding that sometimes the most powerful way to confront a giant is not with a bigger giant, but with a well-aimed stone of truth launched from the sling of a clever mind. This legacy inspires courage not as the absence of fear, but as the conviction to act wisely in spite of it, reminding us that the arc of the moral universe may bend toward justice, but it often requires a clever nudge from the tricksters among us to get it moving. If the tricksters' pursuit of justice shows us how to challenge the world, their boundless curiosity reveals why they do it, an insatiable drive to venture into the unknown and discover what lies there. This 13th teaching is perhaps the most fundamental to their nature, the very engine of their chaotic creativity. Tricksters are the ultimate explorers, not just of physical landscapes, but of the very boundaries of possibility itself. They are the ones who ask, what's on the other side of that mountain? What happens if I try this? And most importantly, why not? This innate, often reckless, curiosity is the spark that ignites every innovation, every discovery, and every leap forward, both in myth and in our own reality. No figure embodies this spirit of adventurous inquiry more perfectly than the Polynesian demigod Maui. His legendary exploits are a testament to what a curious mind, armed with courage and ingenuity, can achieve. He looked at the sky and saw not an immutable ceiling, but a problem to be solved. The sun raced across it too quickly, leaving his people with insufficient time for fishing, farming, and life. So, with his magical fishhook, he didn't just ask the sun to slow down, he literally lassoed it from the sky and demanded a bargain, forcing it to agree to a longer, slower path across the heavens. His curiosity wasn't passive wonder, it was an active, world-altering force. Similarly, his feat of fishing up islands from the ocean depths began with a simple, profound question: what lies beneath? He didn't accept the empty horizon as the final word. He cast his hook into the deep unknown and pulled up entire landmasses, creating new homes and possibilities for his people. Maui's stories teach us that curiosity is not a frivolous pastime but the very mechanism of creation. It is the audacity to believe that the world as it is given is not the world as it must be, and that a single question, pursued with enough determination, can literally reshape the geography of existence. This trickster ethic of exploration extends far beyond the physical. It's about intellectual and spiritual curiosity as well. The Norse god Loki's entire role in the myths is that of the divine provocateur, the one who cannot leave well enough alone. He constantly pokes and prods at the boundaries of the god's reality, not always with malice, but with a deep-seated need to see what will happen. What happens if I cut off Thor's wife's hair? What happens if I prevent the giant from finishing the wall around Asgard? What happens if I disrupt Baldur's perfect invulnerability? His actions, while frequently catastrophic, are driven by a compulsive need to test the system, to explore its weaknesses and its strengths, to see how far it can bend before it breaks. Loki's curiosity is dangerous and unsettling, but it is also what prevents the divine world from becoming a stagnant, complacent paradise. He is the necessary agent of chaos that forces everyone else to adapt, to think, and to grow. He explores the metaphorical boundaries of their society so they don't have to, paying the price for the knowledge he uncovers. This teaching is a vital antidote to the comfort of the familiar. Our brains are wired to seek routine and predictability. It's an energy-saving mechanism that kept our ancestors safe from danger. But the trickster myth argues that while the comfort zone is safe, it is also where potential goes to die. Growth, innovation, and true discovery always happen in the uncharted territory just beyond its edges. The curious trickster, whether it's Maui fishing up new islands or Anansi exploring new ways to trick his neighbors, is our mythological guide into that uncertain space. They give us permission to be beginners, to ask stupid questions, to try things that might not work, and to value the journey of exploration as much as the destination. They remind us that every great invention, every scientific breakthrough, and every work of art began with a simple, trickster-like thought: I wonder what would happen if. In our modern world, where information is at our fingertips but true wonder can sometimes feel in short supply, this lesson is more crucial than ever. It encourages us to put down the curated feed and go down a real rabbit hole of our own making, to learn a skill for no other reason than the joy of it, to travel to a place where we don't know the language, to read a book on a topic we know nothing about. It's about cultivating a mindset that sees the world not as a fixed set of answers, but as an endless series of fascinating questions waiting to be pursued. The trickster's curiosity is the engine of a life fully lived, a reminder that our horizons are only as small as our willingness to explore them, and this very act of exploration, of reaching out to understand the world around us, naturally leads to a profound realization of how deeply intertwined with that world we truly are. This profound sense of curiosity that drives tricksters to explore the unknown ultimately leads them to a monumental discovery, one that forms the very heart of our next teaching, the fundamental interconnectedness of all life. While Maui's hook pulls islands from the sea and Loki's schemes test the fabric of society, other tricksters perform acts that reveal an even deeper truth: that every element of existence, from the smallest insect to the grandest celestial body, is woven into a single, intricate, and delicate web. These figures become ecological prophets, their chaotic actions inadvertently demonstrating that no being, no matter how clever or powerful, operates in a vacuum, and that every action sends a ripple through the entire living world. We see this ecological wisdom shine brilliantly in the cycle of stories surrounding the Native American raven, particularly among the indigenous cultures of the Pacific Northwest. In one powerful narrative, the world exists in a state of perpetual darkness, a condition that affects every single creature. The people cannot hunt or fish effectively, the plants struggle to grow, and the entire ecosystem is locked in a stagnant, cold balance. The raven's legendary theft of the sun is far more than a simple act of bringing light to humanity. It is a radical intervention that recalibrates the entire environment. His action isn't just for people. It warms the rocks for the lizards, it fuels the photosynthesis for the forests, it creates the conditions for the salmon runs, and it establishes the cycle of day and night that governs the behavior of every animal. The story makes it clear that the raven didn't just steal a ball of light. He restored the fundamental engine of the ecosystem itself. His individual, self-interested act of trickery, for he is often portrayed as wanting the sun for himself, results in a cosmic scale rebalancing that benefits every strand in the web of life. The teaching is unmistakable. The well-being of the individual is inextricably linked to the health of the whole system. This theme of ecological interdependence is echoed half a world away in the Dreamtime stories of Aboriginal Australia, where the trickster crow often plays a pivotal role. In various tales, Crow's adventures directly shape the landscape and determine the availability of vital resources like water. His actions, whether clumsy or cunning, have direct consequences for the land and all its inhabitants. These narratives are not just explanations for how a certain river was formed or why a particular rock looks the way it does. They are encoded maps of responsibility. They teach that the environment is not a separate, external entity to be dominated or exploited, but a relative, a living extension of the community that requires respect and reciprocal care. When Crow accidentally spills a waterhole or angers a spirit that causes a drought, the resulting hardship affects everyone and everything, teaching that human or trickster folly has immediate environmental repercussions. Conversely, when he successfully secures a resource, it is a blessing for the entire community of life. This ancient, disguised teaching offers a radical reframing of our relationship with the natural world. It moves beyond the modern concept of environmentalism as simply conserving resources or protecting cute animals. It proposes a relational worldview where humans are not the masters of nature but participants in a vast, sentient network of reciprocal exchange. The raven and the crow don't manage the environment. They interact with it as a living, responsive relative. Their stories provide a moral and philosophical framework for sustainability that is thousands of years old, arguing that true stewardship arises from recognizing this kinship. It's the understanding that polluting a river isn't just an economic misstep. It's a violation of a relationship akin to poisoning a family member. That clear-cutting a forest isn't just resource extraction. It's a form of forgetting our place within a larger, breathing community. In an era defined by climate change and biodiversity loss, this trickster teaching is not merely relevant, it is essential. It challenges the dominant, isolationist worldview that humanity can thrive while the rest of the natural world suffers. The myths of raven and crow insist that this is a fatal illusion. They teach that our survival is bound to the survival of the forests, the oceans, and the atmosphere. Their stories, born from deep observation and reverence, call us to remember our role within the web, not as its conquerors, but as its mindful and responsible members. This wisdom, disguised as a simple animal fable, provides the ethical foundation for a truly sustainable future, one built not on fear or guilt, but on a profound recognition of our inherent interconnectedness with every other living thing. While the trickster's boundless curiosity drives them to explore the interconnected web of life, Their greatest successes often come from a surprising and counterintuitive virtue, the profound power of patience and strategic timing. In a world that often celebrates speed, instant gratification, and decisive action, the Trickster offers a masterclass in the art of waiting. Their stories reveal that true cleverness isn't just about knowing what to do, but knowing precisely when to do it. This 15th teaching shows us that the most effective action is often a carefully chosen pause, a moment of watchful stillness that allows the perfect opportunity to reveal itself. Consider the African tortoise, a figure who appears in many folktales across the continent, often as a slow-moving but brilliantly strategic counterpart to faster, more impulsive animals. In one classic story, the tortoise finds himself in a situation where he must compete against a much faster opponent, like the hare. But unlike the overconfident hare who rushes ahead only to fail from arrogance, the tortoise's strategy is built on a deep understanding of his own nature and the value of persistence. He doesn't try to run faster, he understands that is a game he cannot win. Instead, he leverages his patience, maintaining a steady, deliberate pace that ultimately outlasts his rival's erratic bursts of speed. His victory isn't a fluke, it's a direct result of his refusal to be rushed into a contest on someone else's terms. He waits for the race to come to him, transforming his apparent weakness into his greatest strength through sheer, unwavering consistency. This lesson in strategic waiting is elevated to an art form in the epic Chinese tale of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong. Here is a character of immense power, capable of incredible speed and magical feats, whose greatest early failing is his utter impatience. He rushes into conflicts, boasts arrogantly, and seeks instant recognition, which repeatedly leads to his downfall and humiliation. His true growth begins when he is placed under the guidance of the monk Tripitaka on a journey to retrieve sacred scriptures. This pilgrimage is a decades-long lesson in patience. The Monkey King, for all his power, cannot simply somersault to the destination. He must walk every step of the way, facing each obstacle in its turn. He learns that some demons cannot be beaten with a club but must be outweighted or outsmarted. He discovers that the right moment to use his immense power is often after a period of observation and restraint. His journey teaches that even the most potent force is wasted if unleashed at the wrong time, and that the greatest mastery is not over others, but over one's own impulsive nature. These narratives powerfully reframe patience not as passive waiting, but as an active, engaged state of readiness. It's the difference between a hunter who sleeps in the blind and one who sits perfectly still, every sense attuned to the forest, watching for the subtle signs that precede the perfect shot. The trickster's patience is this second kind, a dynamic, strategic pause. It's the moment Anansi spends spinning his web, not yet catching flies but understanding that the structure must be perfect to hold his future meal. It's the pause Loki takes before delivering a cutting piece of gossip, waiting for the exact moment it will cause the most delicious chaos. This kind of patience is a form of intelligence, a way of gathering information and aligning oneself with the natural rhythms of a situation rather than trying to force it into submission through sheer will. In our modern context, which glorifies hustle culture and rapid iteration, this ancient teaching is a vital corrective. We are constantly pressured to act quickly, to pivot instantly, to respond immediately to every notification and market shift. The trickster reminds us that this frantic pace can lead to burnout and poor decisions. There is immense power in knowing when to step back, to observe, to let a situation develop fully before committing to a course of action. Whether in negotiating a deal, nurturing a relationship, or developing a creative project, strategic patience allows for a deeper understanding and a more impactful entry point. It reduces unnecessary risk because it prevents us from wasting energy on efforts doomed to fail by poor timing. The tortoise doesn't win by being fast. he wins by ensuring the race is ultimately decided on his terms. This sophisticated understanding of tempo and rhythm is what separates a mere reaction from a truly strategic action, a lesson that allows us to navigate our complex world not with frantic speed, but with graceful and effective timing. This dance between chaos and order is perhaps nowhere more perfectly illustrated than in the complex legacy of the Norse god Loki. He is not a simple agent of anarchy. He is the essential spark of disruption in a system that risks becoming rigid and lifeless. Consider his role in the myth of the wall around Asgard. The gods, fearing invasion, make a disastrous deal with a giant builder, promising him the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freyja if he can complete the fortification in one season. As the giant, aided by his powerful stallion, nears completion, the gods panic, realizing the terrible price of their own short-sightedness. It is Loki who both created this crisis, having advised them to accept the seemingly impossible terms, and who resolves it. He transforms into a beautiful mare, distracting the stallion and preventing the wall's completion, thus saving the gods from their fate. In this single story, Loki embodies the entire Trickster paradox. He is the source of the dangerous chaos and the architect of its solution, proving that disruption is sometimes the only force that can prevent a system from collapsing under the weight of its own poor decisions. His actions teach that order, when it becomes inflexible and desperate, can be its own kind of prison, and that a dose of creative chaos is the necessary key to liberation. This understanding reframes chaos not as a terrifying void to be avoided at all costs, but as the raw, unformed potential from which new possibilities are born. In the natural world, a forest fire is a catastrophic event of pure chaos, yet it clears away old growth, releases nutrients back into the soil, and allows for the germination of seeds that cannot sprout any other way. The Trickster is the mythological equivalent of that forest fire. They are the force that burns down the old, stagnant structures to make room for new life. The Polynesian Maui's attempt to win immortality for humanity ends in his gruesome death, a moment of ultimate chaos and failure. Yet, this very failure establishes the necessary and sacred boundary between life and death, giving human existence its meaning, its urgency, and its precious beauty. The chaos of his defeat creates the foundational order of the human condition. These stories assure us that periods of breakdown are often precursors to breakthrough, and that the discomfort of uncertainty is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that something is trying to emerge. Learning to navigate this space between chaos and order is what cultivates true resilience and adaptability. A life that seeks only perfect order is brittle. The smallest unforeseen event can shatter it entirely. Conversely, a life that is pure chaos is exhausting and unsustainable, lacking any structure to support growth. The Trickster teaches us to develop what we might call a chaos tolerance, the ability to remain calm, curious, and creative when our best-laid plans fall apart. This is an essential skill in our modern world, where change is the only constant. Economic markets shift, technologies disrupt entire industries, and personal lives are upended by events beyond our control. Those who can channel their inner trickster in these moments, who can look at a shattered plan not as a disaster but as a pile of raw materials for a new one, are the ones who not only survive but thrive. They are the ones who can pivot a failing business model, find an innovative solution to a sudden problem, or reinvent themselves after a personal loss. The ultimate teaching here is that harmony is not the absence of chaos, but the dynamic, ever-adjusting balance between it and order. It is not a static state of peace, but a vibrant, active process of negotiation. Think of a skilled jazz musician. The structure of the song provides the order, the key, the chord progression, the rhythm. But the magic, the true art, happens in the improvised solos, the chaotic, spontaneous expressions of individual creativity that play with the structure without completely destroying it. The trickster is that improvising soloist in the symphony of mythology. They remind us that a life well lived is not a perfectly executed sheet of music played note for note, but a beautiful, sometimes messy, jazz performance. It is in the interplay between the expected and the unexpected, the planned and the spontaneous, that we find not just safety, but aliveness itself. This embrace of life's inherent dynamism, guided by the trickster's fearless example, empowers us to trust our own ability to dance in the uncertainty, finding our footing not on solid ground, but on the shifting, creative edge between what is and what could be. Amidst the rich tapestry of lessons on community and interconnectedness, the trickster myths offer a powerful counterbalance, a vital teaching on the necessity of self-reliance. This isn't a rejection of the collective, but a masterful illustration of how individual initiative forms the very bedrock upon which strong communities are built. The trickster, so often operating on the fringes, becomes an unlikely champion of personal agency, showing us that the courage to think for oneself and to act on one's own ingenuity is the first, most crucial step in navigating life's inevitable challenges. No figure embodies this spirit of resourceful independence more vividly than Anansi the spider. In countless tales, Anansi finds himself in seemingly impossible situations, pitted against foes far larger and stronger than himself. A leopard threatens his family, a drought parches the land, or a sky god demands an impossible tribute. Anansi never waits for a hero to arrive or petitions a higher power for salvation. His first and only resort is his own magnificent mind. He sits down quite literally and thinks his way through the problem. He observes, he plans, he improvises. In one famous story, tasked with capturing the elusive and dangerous Marlborough hornets, he doesn't craft a net or a weapon. He fills a calabash with water, pours it over himself, and tells the hornets he is seeking shelter from a terrible rainstorm, suggesting they join him in the dry good. His success is born entirely from his ability to assess the situation, understand the psychology of his opponent, and devise a clever, self-reliant solution using nothing but the resources immediately available to him. Anansi teaches us that our most powerful tool is not external aid, but the internal capacity for critical thought and creative action. This theme resonates powerfully across the Atlantic in the adventures of the Native American coyote. Coyote is the ultimate opportunist, a wanderer who traverses the world relying solely on his wits and his willingness to try anything once. He doesn't have a fixed home, a tribe to defend him, or a stockpile of resources. His survival depends on his ability to read his environment, to adapt on the fly, and to learn from every mistake, often the hard way. When he is hungry, he doesn't lament his empty belly. He devises a plan to trick the prairie dogs into a dance contest so he can catch his meal. When he is cold, he doesn't wait for someone to offer him a blanket. He tries to steal fire from the fireflies with predictably chaotic results. Coyote's value isn't in his success rate, which is notoriously low, but in his indomitable spirit of self-sufficient experimentation. He embodies the raw, untamed drive to figure things out for oneself, to take ownership of one's condition, and to never, ever see oneself as a passive victim of circumstance. The profound teaching here is not about radical individualism or rejecting community. The trickster's self-reliance is always contextual. Anansi's cleverness often benefits his family, and Coyote's chaotic adventures frequently result in some gift for humanity, like the shaping of a river or the bringing of a new technology. The lesson is about the source of initiative. It comes from within, a community of dependent individuals waiting for instructions or rescue is a fragile community. A community comprised of self-reliant, critically thinking individuals is a resilient and innovative one. The trickster myth argues that you must first be able to stand on your own 2 feet before you can truly stand with others. It's about developing the inner confidence to trust your own judgment, to make your own decisions, and to take responsibility for the outcomes, whether they lead to a glorious feast or a face full of mud. This is an incredibly empowering message for the modern viewer. In a world filled with expert opinions, algorithmic recommendations, and constant external pressures to conform, the trickster's call to self-reliance is a vital reminder to reconnect with our own inner compass. It encourages us to not just follow instructions, but to understand the principles behind them. It urges us to not simply consume information, but to question its source and test its validity for ourselves. Whether we're navigating a career change, solving a complex personal problem, or simply deciding what to believe, the spirit of Anansi and Coyote reminds us that the most reliable authority we will ever have is the one we cultivate within. This fierce, intelligent independence is the foundation of true autonomy, granting us the confidence to carve our own unique path through the world, guided by our own wit, our own curiosity, and our own hard-won wisdom. What makes the trickster such an enduring and beloved figure across countless cultures isn't just their brilliant cunning or world-altering chaos. It's their breathtaking, hilarious, and deeply relatable imperfection. These are not pristine, infallible heroes on gleaming pedestals. They are gloriously, catastrophically flawed, and in that very fallibility, they offer us one of their most compassionate and liberating teachings, the radical acceptance of our own whole, messy, imperfect selves. Where other myths might present ideals to aspire to, trickster tales hold up a mirror, showing us a reflection that includes our greed, our vanity, our foolishness, and our errors, not as monstrous failings to be purged, but as intrinsic threads in the rich, complex tapestry of being human. Consider the Greek god Hermes, a figure who embodies this duality from his very first hours of life. Born at dawn in a hidden cave, he is a divine being, destined to become the messenger of the gods and the guide of souls to the underworld. Yet by midday, this miraculous infant is already yielding to his trickster nature. Feeling a pang of hunger, he doesn't wait for a divine offering. He toddles out of his cradle, invents the lyre from a turtle shell, and then hatches a scheme to steal the sacred cattle of his powerful older brother, Apollo. He is both the creator of beautiful music and a common thief, a divine prodigy and a mischievous toddler, all wrapped into one. His story doesn't ask us to choose which Hermes is the real one, the noble god or the cunning trickster. It insists that he is both, and that his power and appeal spring directly from this unresolvable contradiction. He teaches us that we, too, contain multitudes. We can be both generous and selfish, wise and foolish in the very same day, and that this isn't a sign of brokenness, but a testament to our complexity. This celebration of the flawed individual is even more poignant in the tales of the African hare, another classic trickster known in various traditions as Sungura or others. The hare is often small and vulnerable, and his plans are frequently driven by the most basic, relatable hungers for food, for comfort, for a bit of respect. He isn't trying to conquer the world, he's just trying to get by, and in doing so, he makes a spectacular mess of things. In one story, he might attempt to trick a larger animal out of a share of the harvest, only to be caught in his own lie and chased away empty-handed. In another, his vanity might lead him to boast about a non-existent feat, forcing him into a panicked, hilarious scramble to avoid being exposed. We don't admire the hare because he is perfect. We love him because he is so perfectly not. His failures are our failures. His short-sighted greed is a mirror to our own occasional pettiness. And because we see him stumble, dust himself off, and scurry on to his next misadventure, we are given permission to do the same with our own stumbles. His stories silently assure us that it's okay to not have it all figured out, that a mistake is not a permanent stain on your character, but a momentary and often very funny part of your ongoing story. This has a profound effect on how we view ourselves and others. In a world that often pressures us to curate a perfect image, on social media, at work, in our communities, the trickster is a subversive force of relief. They give us a cultural framework to laugh at our own pretensions and to be a little more gentle with our own shortcomings. When we see a divine being like Hermes succumb to the temptation of a juicy steak, it suddenly feels a little easier to forgive ourselves for our own much smaller indulgences. When we watch the hare's exaggerated vanity blow up in his face, we might recognize a hint of our own and decide to take ourselves a little less seriously. This isn't about excusing bad behavior, but about normalizing the human experience of being a work in progress. Perfection is a cold, distant, and lonely ideal. The trickster invites us into the warm, bustling, and forgiving community of the imperfect, where growth isn't about eliminating our flaws, but about integrating them into a wiser, more self-accepting whole. By internalizing this teaching, we fundamentally shift our approach to personal growth and our relationships with others. Self-improvement ceases to be a grim war against our perceived faults and becomes a more compassionate process of understanding and channeling our entire personality. That stubborn streak of trickster-like rebelliousness isn't just a problem to be solved. It might be the very thing that gives you the courage to question a bad policy at work or to break an unhealthy family cycle. And when we extend this acceptance to others, we build healthier, more resilient relationships. We stop expecting the people in our lives to be perfect and begin to appreciate them in their full, flawed humanity. We learn to love the whole person, not just the curated highlight reel, understanding that the very quirks and imperfections that sometimes drive us crazy are also part of what makes them uniquely them. The trickster, in all their glorious, messy imperfection, ultimately teaches us that true wholeness isn't achieved by cutting away our rough edges, but by recognizing that those edges are what give us our shape, our character, and our authentic, relatable beauty. And so we arrive at a teaching that lies at the very heart of the trickster's existence, a meta-lesson that illuminates the very medium through which all these other wisdoms are delivered. The 19th teaching reveals the trickster not just as a character in a story, but as the master storyteller themselves, the weaver of the very narrative threads that hold culture, identity, and reality together. These chaotic figures are acutely aware of the power of a well-told tale, and they use narrative itself as their ultimate tool of creation, persuasion, and transformation. This is where the trickster turns to face the audience, breaking the fourth wall of mythology to remind us that we are not just passive listeners, but active participants in the ongoing story of our own lives. Consider the sheer artistry of a figure like Anansi the spider. His entire quest to own all the world's stories is the perfect allegory for this teaching. He understands that whoever controls the narrative controls the world. Stories are not mere entertainment. They are the vessels of law, of history, of moral codes, and of collective identity. By securing them, he isn't just hoarding knowledge, he is preserving the very soul of his people. This is a profound recognition that culture survives not through stone monuments or written decrees, but through the stories passed down from one generation to the next, around campfires and across kitchen tables. The trickster, in his role as both tale teller and tale character, becomes the living link in this chain, ensuring that the wisdom, the humor, and the very spirit of a people are never forgotten, even in the face of displacement or oppression. He teaches that to share a story is to share a piece of yourself, and to listen to a story is to welcome another's experience into your own understanding. This narrative power extends beyond preservation into the very shaping of reality. Loki, in the Norse myths, is a virtuoso of this craft. He doesn't just lie, he spins alternative realities so compelling that others willingly step into them. He creates elaborate fictions like the story he tells to trick the blind god Hodder into killing Baldur, that have the power to alter destiny and rewrite the future of the entire cosmos. His manipulations show us that narrative is a force that can build kingdoms or shatter them, that can forge unbreakable alliances or sow seeds of eternal suspicion. The trickster understands that facts are one thing, but the story wrapped around those facts is everything. It determines meaning, assigns blame, inspires love, and justifies war. This is a formidable and sobering power, and the trickster's frequent downfall serves as a warning. Those who live by the story can also be destroyed by a better one. Yet, for all its potential for deception, the trickster's ultimate lesson about storytelling is a positive and empowering one. These myths themselves are an invitation, a beckoning to join the circle. They are not closed, finished artifacts. They are open invitations to engage, to interpret, and to add our own chapter. When we listen to a coyote story and laugh at his foolishness, we are not just being told a lesson about humility. We are participating in a communal act of meaning-making. We are connecting with everyone else who has ever heard that story and seen a little of themselves in Coyote's antics. This shared experience builds the invisible bonds of community, creating a shared language of symbols and values that allows us to understand each other at a level deeper than mere words. The story becomes a shared territory where we can safely explore complex emotions, confront social taboos, and grapple with life's biggest questions, all from the safety of a fictional framework. This appreciation for the power of narrative is perhaps the trickster's greatest gift because it empowers us to become the authors of our own existence. We are all constantly telling ourselves stories about who we are, why things happen to us, what we are capable of achieving. The trickster encourages us to pick up that pen with intention. Are we telling ourselves a story of limitation and victimhood, or one of resourcefulness and possibility? Are we weaving a narrative of isolation or one of interconnectedness, by showing us how easily reality can be bent and shaped through tale-telling? The trickster gives us permission to edit our own internal scripts, to reframe our challenges as adventures, and to recognize that the next chapter is always ours to write. This conscious engagement with our personal and collective stories is the first, vital step toward the next teaching, which brings our focus from the grand scope of narrative down to the smallest, most critical unit of experience, the present moment itself. After celebrating the power of narrative, we turn inward to a teaching that grounds all the trickster's chaotic wisdom in the most immediate experience of all, the profound practice of mindfulness and presence. For all their grand schemes and future-oriented plans, trickster myths are filled with moments that scream a simple, vital warning: pay attention right now or face the consequences. These characters, so often masters of illusion and long-term deception, become unlikely guides to the power of the present moment through their most hilarious and humbling failures, teaching us that a distracted mind is its own worst enemy. We see this lesson play out with painful clarity in the endless misadventures of the Native American coyote. Coyote's plans rarely fail because they are poorly conceived. They fail because he gets lost in his own head at the critical moment. He might be meticulously setting a trap for some prairie dogs, but then he becomes so captivated by his own cleverness, so busy fantasizing about the magnificent feast he's about to enjoy, that he forgets to watch his step and tumbles into the trap himself. In another tale, he might be carrying a precious bundle of wisdom or fire, instructed not to open it until he reaches his destination. But consumed by curiosity and impatient speculation about what's inside, he peeks early, and the precious contents escape, lost forever. Coyote's downfall is rarely a superior adversary. It's his own lack of awareness. He is so focused on the future prize or so haunted by a past grievance that he becomes blind to the reality unfolding directly in front of his nose. His stories are not just comedies, they are ancient, amplified cautionary tales about the cost of living anywhere but the here and now. This theme of distraction leading to disaster is a universal thread in the Trickster tapestry. The Norse Loki, for all his foresight, is often undone by a moment of present-minded arrogance. He might successfully orchestrate a complex scheme, but then, in the thrill of his own victory, he can't resist leaning in to deliver a gloating punchline, revealing his involvement and ensuring his eventual brutal punishment. His lack of situational awareness, his failure to read the room and understand that the moment for talking had passed proves fatal. Similarly, the African tortoise, in his famous race, wins not through superior speed but through a relentless, focused presence. While the hare is distracted by overconfidence, taking a nap because he's already thinking of his victory celebration, the tortoise is wholly absorbed in the simple, repetitive act of placing one foot in front of the other. His victory is a testament to the power of focused, mindful action over scattered, assumptive thought. The disguised teaching here is a powerful endorsement of mindfulness, not as an abstract spiritual concept, but as a practical tool for survival and success. The Trickster shows us that presence is the essential foundation upon which all other skills are built. Cleverness is useless if you're not present enough to apply it at the right time. Courage means nothing if you're not aware enough to see the real threat. The practice of mindfulness, of anchoring our awareness in the sensations, details, and demands of the current moment, is what allows us to access our full intelligence and respond to life with grace instead of reacting with blind habit. It's the difference between Coyote, so lost in his fantasy that he walks off a cliff, and a wise warrior who notices the subtle shift in the wind, the quiet snap of a twig, and thereby avoids an ambush. In our modern world, a landscape designed to hijack our attention at every turn, this Trickster teaching is a vital lifeline. We are constantly pulled out of the present moment by the ping of a notification, the allure of a timeline, or the anxiety of a future deadline. We multitask, our consciousness split between a conversation and our phone, between our work and our worries. The Trickster's hilarious failures are a mirror to this modern condition, showing us the high cost of this perpetual distraction. We miss the subtle cues in a loved one's expression because we're planning our response. We make poor decisions because we're reacting to a feared future rather than the actual facts in front of us. We breeze through beautiful moments without ever truly tasting them because our minds are elsewhere. The Trickster, in his foolishness, calls us back to our senses. He invites us to cultivate what we might call a Coyote awareness, not to be like him in his distraction, but to learn from his mistakes and develop the opposite skill. It's about choosing to put down the metaphorical, precious bundle of our worries and plans for just a moment, to simply listen to the person in front of us without mentally rehearsing what we'll say next. It's about tasting our food, feeling the sun on our skin, and fully engaging with the task at hand, whether it's writing a report or playing with a child. This isn't a call to abandon planning or reflection, but to ground those activities in a firm foundation of present moment awareness, so that our plans are informed by reality and our reflections are based on experience, not fear. By learning to inhabit our own lives more fully, moment by moment, we not only avoid the metaphorical cliffs and traps, but we also discover that the richness, beauty, and wisdom we seek have been here all along, waiting for us to simply stop, look, and listen. And so we arrive at the final, all-encompassing lesson woven through every Trickster tale, a truth that underpins the very cosmos they inhabit, the inescapable and beautiful cyclical nature of existence itself. Where other myths might tell a linear story of progress from a primordial past to an eschatological end, the world of the Trickster is a vast turning wheel. They are not just participants in this cycle, they are its agents, its embodiment, and its most eloquent, if chaotic, witnesses. This 21st teaching invites us to step back from the isolated events of our lives, the victories, the heartbreaks, the triumphs, and the disasters, and to see them for what they truly are, necessary phases in a grand, repeating pattern of creation, dissolution, and rebirth that gives life its depth, its meaning, and its enduring promise. Consider the ultimate fate of the Norse Loki. His story does not end with a simple punishment or a tidy moral conclusion. His boundless cunning and disruptive energy, which once served the gods and then turned against them, culminates in his brutal binding, a moment of profound stasis and suffering. But this is not the end. The myths tell us that he lies there, trapped, until the arrival of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. At that destined time, the chains will break. Loki will rise, steering a ship of the dead toward the final, cataclysmic battle that will consume the world in fire. And from those scorched, silent ashes, a new, green world will emerge, fertile and peaceful, populated by a new generation of gods and humans. Loki is not just a cause of the destruction. He is an essential part of the cycle that makes renewal possible. His story teaches that even the most chaotic, destructive forces are not aberrations to be eliminated, but integral parts of a process that clears away the old, the stagnant, and the corrupt to make space for new growth. His pain is not meaningless. It is the necessary gestation for a world yet to be born. This pattern of death and rebirth is echoed powerfully in the Polynesian cycles of Maui. His legendary efforts to win immortality for humanity end in his gruesome death, a moment of ultimate failure and finality. Yet this very failure establishes the sacred, defining rhythm of human life. By failing to conquer death, Maui successfully establishes its necessity, giving human existence its preciousness, its urgency, and its profound meaning. His story is not a tragedy of what could have been, but a celebration of the cycle as it is. Life gains its beauty precisely because it is finite. The sorrow of loss gives depth to the joy of connection. The ending gives meaning to the story. Maui's attempt and failure did not break the world. It completed it, anchoring humanity firmly within the natural order of things, an order defined by constant, rhythmic change, where every sunset promises a sunrise and every ending contains the seed of a new beginning. This cosmic perspective offered by the Trickster is a profound antidote to the modern cult of permanence. We are taught to seek stability, to build empires and legacies meant to last forever, to fear change and loss as if they are personal failures. The Trickster laughs in the face of this impossible ambition. They show us through their own chaotic journeys that trying to hold on to any single phase, whether it's a peak of success or a moment of perfect happiness, is as futile as trying to stop the turning of the seasons. The leaves must fall for the tree to survive the winter and bud again in the spring. The Trickster's role is to be the wind that shakes the branches, ensuring that nothing clings for too long. They teach us that resilience is not found in building a fortress against change, but in developing a deep, trusting flexibility, the wisdom to know that winter, however harsh, is always followed by spring, and that the darkness of night always gives way to the dawn. By internalizing this final teaching, we can learn to meet every phase of our lives with a new kind of grace. A period of failure is no longer a verdict on our worth, but a necessary fallow period, a time of composting and gathering strength for the next creative surge. A time of joy is not something to cling to in fear of its passing, but a moment to be savored fully and completely, with the understanding that its fleeting nature is what makes it so sweet. The Trickster frees us from the tyranny of linear thinking, inviting us to see our lives as a spiral. We may encounter similar challenges and joys again and again, but each time we do, we are at a different point on the wheel, armed with the wisdom and experience from all the previous turns. This is the ultimate gift of these chaotic, wise, foolish, and eternal figures. They give us the courage to release our grip, to trust the turning of the wheel, and to find our place with all its meaning and beauty in the magnificent, never-ending cycle of all things. It might seem like a leap to connect these ancient, often absurd, myths to the stark realities of our 21st century lives. We navigate a world of digital algorithms, global supply chains, and complex social systems that would be utterly incomprehensible to the storytellers who first spun tales of Coyote and Anansi. Yet, the very complexity and pace of our modern existence is precisely why these trickster teachings are not just relevant, they are absolutely essential survival tools. The challenges have changed their form, but the fundamental human needs to adapt, to question, to connect, to find meaning remain the same, and the trickster's timeless wisdom provides a surprisingly robust operating system for it all. Think about the digital landscape, a realm that often feels like a modern trickster's playground. We are constantly bombarded with information, much of it designed to manipulate our attention, our emotions, and even our beliefs. Algorithms, in their own way, are like digital tricksters, shaping our reality based on opaque rules and hidden agendas. In this environment, the trickster's core teaching of questioning authority is our first and most vital line of defense. It's the mental muscle that makes us pause before sharing a sensational headline, that asks who benefits from a piece of content, and that seeks out diverse perspectives instead of settling into a comfortable echo chamber. The Norse Loki's defiance of the gods translates directly into a healthy skepticism toward big tech, powerful institutions, and viral trends. It's not about cynical rejection, but about the critical thinking required to navigate a world where deception is often automated and scaled to an unprecedented degree. Beyond self-defense, the trickster spirit is the very engine of innovation in our time. The entrepreneurial world venerates the disruptor, a figure who, like the Native American raven, isn't afraid to steal fire from the established giants to bring light to a new idea. These modern ravens look at industries that have operated the same way for decades and ask the same fundamental trickster question: why? Why must we do it this way? What if we tried something completely different? This mindset of creative rebellion, of using wit and resourcefulness instead of brute force, is what fuels startups, drives scientific breakthroughs, and reimagines social structures. Anansi's lesson in using whatever is at hand is the foundation of the Jugod innovation, or the growth hacking mentality, solving complex problems not with vast resources, but with cleverness, agility, and a willingness to break conventional patterns. On a deeply personal level, these myths offer a salve for the anxiety and pressure of modern life. We are often presented with curated, idealized versions of success and happiness, narratives that can make our own messy, imperfect journeys feel like failures. This is where the trickster's embrace of flaws and failures becomes a radical act of self-acceptance. The African hare's constant blunders and the Greek Hermes's divine mischief normalize the experience of not having it all figured out. They give us permission to be works in progress, to experiment, to fail spectacularly, and to get back up with a wiser, if slightly bruised, perspective. In a culture that often fears mistakes, the trickster celebrates them as the only true path to learning and growth. Their resilience is a model for our own mental health, teaching us to bend with the winds of change rather than shatter under the pressure to be perfect. Furthermore, the trickster's deep ecological lessons, embodied by figures like the raven who understands the interconnectedness of all things, provide a crucial ethical compass for addressing our most pressing global challenges. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and resource scarcity are not problems that can be solved with a rigid, siloed mindset. They require the trickster's ability to see the whole system, to understand how our action in one part of the web creates a ripple through all the others. The myth teaches that we are not separate from our environment. We are in constant relationship with it. This ancient, holistic wisdom is now being echoed by the most advanced systems thinking in science and policy, urging us to move from a model of domination to one of stewardship and reciprocity. The trickster's call is to use our human cleverness not to exploit the natural world, but to innovate in ways that restore balance and ensure a thriving planet for all its inhabitants. Ultimately, the most profound modern application of these teachings is in how we choose to live our daily lives. Do we face a challenging conversation at work? Perhaps we can channel Anansi's art of persuasive communication, seeking a clever path forward rather than a confrontational deadlock. Do we feel overwhelmed by the seriousness of the world? We can recall Coyote's disastrous antics and give ourselves the gift of levity, using humor as a tool for resilience and connection. Are we stuck in a rigid routine? We can invoke Maui's curious spirit and venture into the unknown, learning a new skill or exploring a new perspective. These stories are not locked in the past. They are a living toolkit, offering strategies for creativity, resilience, and ethical engagement that are as powerful today as they were millennia ago. They remind us that the most potent magic isn't found in some distant realm, but in the creative, adaptive, and deeply human spirit that these timeless tricksters continue to ignite within us. We've journeyed together through 21 profound teachings hidden within trickster myths from every corner of the globe, uncovering layers of wisdom nestled inside stories of chaos, humor, and unexpected genius. From the West African spider Anansi teaching us resourcefulness, to the Norse Loki pushing us to question authority, to the Native American Coyote reminding us to laugh at our own stumbles, each of these ancient narratives offers a unique lens through which to view our own modern lives. They aren't just tales from a distant past. They are living, breathing guides that speak directly to the challenges and opportunities we face today. Whether it's learning resilience from the Polynesian Maui's courageous failures, understanding interconnectedness from the raven's world-changing theft of the sun, or embracing our own beautiful imperfections through the escapades of Hermes or the hare, these stories provide a timeless toolkit for navigating the complexity of being human. As you step away from this exploration, I invite you to carry a piece of this trickster spirit with you. The next time you face a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, ask yourself, how would Anansi use the resources already at hand to weave a creative solution? When you encounter an unjust rule or an outdated tradition, channel Loki's rebellious curiosity and ask why it exists and whether it still serves a purpose. And when you inevitably make a mistake or fall short of perfection, remember Coyote's hilarious blunders and give yourself the grace to laugh, learn, and try again. These myths encourage us to live more flexibly, to think more critically, and to connect more deeply with both our communities and the natural world around us. They challenge us to be not just consumers of wisdom, but active participants in our own ongoing story, weaving our own narratives of growth, balance, and understanding. If these stories and their hidden lessons resonated with you, I'd love to hear which trickster teaching struck a chord. Was it the value of strategic patience embodied by the tortoise, or the transformative power of curiosity shown by Maui? Share your reflections in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and learn from each other's perspectives. For more journeys into the hidden wisdom of mythology and history, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an exploration. Thank you for joining me on this incredible adventure across cultures and through time. May the trickster's clever, resilient, and endlessly adaptable spirit inspire your path forward, reminding you that wisdom often wears a mischievous smile and that the most profound truths are sometimes hidden in the most unexpected places.